Give it a go. Great. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Budang dhammang sanghang namasami. I really want to talk about faith this morning and share some of the things that I have read in the suttas and my current understanding of those, and then talk a little bit about what I think it means. So faith is not in Buddhism, and actually historically in Christianity, especially according to Karen Armstrong, is not adherence to a belief system. It's actually trust, confidence, and one of the 10 powers of Tathagata is that they understand what is possible and what is impossible. And the definition of faith in the scriptures is that we trust, we have confidence in the Buddha's enlightenment. That invariably, like throughout the scriptures, when there's a description of the gradual training, it starts with the Tathagata arises in the world, and then there's some kind of interaction that takes place, some kind of contact that a being has with that Buddha, or with the Buddha's teachings, or with the Buddha's disciples, and there's a heart response. There's some kind of trust and confidence that gets evoked, and that's the beginning of it all. That's then we start to adopt, accept, try out what the Buddha is telling us about human nature, about reality, about life, about our own hearts and minds. And so our faith is in that. Our faith is not in, sometimes I've heard it in Dhamma talks, and actually I'm just talking about the scriptures. Sometimes I hear in Dhamma talks faith being, trusting in the practice, and trusting in our own ability. These are all true and good, but the actual definition of faith in the suttas is that we have confidence and trust that the Buddha did become enlightened, that the Buddha did penetrate completely through and see reality and see things the way that they really are. That's the linchpin, that's the foundation, that's the cornerstone of what our faith is in. And personally, I find that helpful, that trust and confidence isn't actually in myself and my own ability. And these things, there's an emotive part to that yeah, of course, I don't want to be super discouraged and pessimistic and think I'm no good. Of course not. But real faith is in the Buddha's enlightenment. And that actually is helpful, because that, when I get all caught up and discouraged, that is gets me out of my head, to go back to the Buddha's path and the Buddha's experience and the Buddha's teachings. So, and the reason I want to talk about this is because I think it's just so important. Trust and confidence is it's the door opening of the path, and then we continually have to step forward and meet a new door, and go through that one, and go through that one, and go through that one. And the trust and the confidence is kind of this fuel and this wind behind our back, and this momentum to keep going and keep trying and keep allowing this process of awakening to unfold in our own hearts and minds. And the confidence is very important. And I think this is why the Buddha, one of the powers of the Tathagata is to know what's possible and what's impossible. And he's constantly telling us that it's possible. It's possible for the human mind to penetrate through delusion. This is possible. And if it were not so, I wouldn't say it. If it weren't so, I wouldn't ask you to be doing these practices. These are the Buddha's words, not mine. And I think that one of the reasons he talks about it's possible is because, and tells us that over and over, is because I think sometimes it feels impossible. It just feels like this granite mountain of delusion that needs to get, penetrated through. This idea of confidence is very real and very practical. I'm at Aloka Vihara, I'm the work nun. So I'm like, you can tell by my age, I'm not, I didn't grow up around tons of technology. I'm not the office person. I'm the outside with the hammer and a nail person. And I've noticed I'm often doing things that I've never done before, like installing toilets, or, changing faucets, or fixing air conditioners. And I really see a pattern, because I'm constantly doing something. I'm trying to learn it, and I've never done it before. And if I have confidence that it can get solved, it can get worked out, the outcome is totally different than if I'm very unsure and, I don't know. Even down to, I remember one time I was taking a faucet out, and I couldn't tell if there were two parts and that they should come apart or not. And so I was scared. Like, if I really torque on this part, if it doesn't come apart, I'm going to break it. And it made a huge difference. As soon as I was confident that, these are for sure two parts, I can tell, then I could unscrew the knot, the bolt. It's down to that. If we believe that it can happen, or if we trust that it can happen, if we have confidence that it can happen, then somehow there's this energy to make it happen, or to be part of realizing it happening. And the Buddha even talks about the 5 faculties, the 5 powers. And the first one is faith, and the second one is energy. Because when we have faith, there's more energy, there's more conviction, there's more, we put our heart into it more, because we're believing in it, we can get behind it. So faith is this fuel that can feed our practice and feed the path. There's a fantastic example of this. I mean, it's very remarkable, but and some people might know it. It's kind of an urban legend at this point, but there's this true thing that happened. It was in 1939. It's actually not far from where I am in California at UC Berkeley. As a graduate student in economics, and he gets to a statistics class, a graduate level statistics class. His name is George Bernard Dancing, Dantzig. I can say Z. I always have to change it to Z usually when I'm talking here in the United States. Zig. So he gets to class, but he gets to class about 5 minutes late, a few minutes late to the class. And it was a graduate seminar. And what had happened that he missed was the prof had put on the board 2 problems that were considered unsolvable, that were considered impossible at that point in statistics. And so George Bernard Dancing gets to class a little bit late. He thinks that this is the homework. So he writes it down and goes off and gets 2 answers, solves these problems, and turns it in the next week. And when he's being interviewed years and years later in his life, he's like, yeah, you know, they seemed harder than the problems that we were typically being given, but he didn't know that they were unsolvable and impossible. So he figured them out. And I mean, this is a completely true story. Like his professor, of course, was completely blown away, and you know, shows up at his house early in the morning, like, oh my word, do you realize, you know? And they publish, and about a year later, Dantzig's trying to figure out what he's going to write his thesis on, and the prof is just like, you know, but you can just put those 2 answers in a binder and you're good to go. That'll be your thesis. So just, that's such an amazing story. But if we really apply it to our lives, that we really, really, really put more trust than we ever have in anything, and more confidence than we ever have in anything into the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, into this path of practice, into this path of purification. I just want to share that as a big encouragement to all of us. And doubt is one of the 5 hindrances, you know, sort of the antithesis of this trust and this confidence. And doubt, the scriptures tell us, arises because of unwise attention. And so when doubt is percolating in our sitting practice, in our mood of the mind, in our day-to-day life, it's very important for us to think about where we're putting the attention and what we're focusing on. And honestly, returning back to the Buddha's enlightenment is a huge antidote for doubt and for these spirals that can happen of frustration, discouragement, poor meism, you know, fear and anxiety about the climate and the future of the planet, whatever. So important for us to be feeding our faith and tending to our faith and taking care of our faith. It's very, very precious. It's really the start, the middle, and the end of the path. And interestingly, in the scriptures, I like to talk about faith because doubt is actually quite a big hindrance for me. And sometimes I've been given instructions, when there's doubt, the anecdote is investigation, which at times has not been constructive, not been productive, because when I really get into a big tangle of doubt, I'm incapable of investigating. Then I end up actually just regurgitating all of my doubt. In the scriptures, the anecdote for doubt, I'll actually read, and this occurs several times. When I'm reading from Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 27, the simile of the elephant's footprint, the shorter one. And so, and it's a beautiful description of the gradual training. And at this point in the gradual training, the practitioner has cultivated virtue. They've had a faith response to the Tathagata. They cultivated virtue. They have been cultivating contentment. They've been cultivating mindfulness, and they're now at the point of sitting down, having established mindfulness as a priority, crossing their legs, and then one by one, they're addressing and abandoning the 5 hindrances that we all become very apparent when we begin to go inward and stop all of the stimulation from outside. And when it gets to the part of abandoning doubt, the practitioner abandoning doubt, they abide, having gone beyond doubt, unperplexed about wholesome states. They purify their mind from doubt. So that's the anecdote here.
Hello?
In the
Yes.
scripture.
Hi.
That we
Yeah, he's calling me. Great. I still do. Are you okay with that?
Bonnie, could you put yourself on mute, Bonnie? So the anecdote for doubt in these descriptions of dealing with the hindrances in the suttas is being unperplexed about wholesome states, which again is this similar to this having trust and confidence in the Buddha's enlightenment, that when we get into a spiral of doubt, one thing that you can do to pop yourself out of that is just realize, oh, I'm doubting, my situation right now. I'm doubting my own practice. I'm doubting the instructions I've gotten. I'm doubting my, following you, blah, 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 blah. Unperplexed about wholesome states. You can become because doubt is, you get all perplexed. But when I get into a doubt, I realize, oh, I can be unperplexed about a wholesome state. I can be unperplexed about the beauty and the purity and the power of metta. And then, it can stop this spiral. And again, you're pulling yourself out of your own little negative problem orientation and just thinking about metta, just thinking about the teaching, just thinking about samadhi, not my samadhi or my metta, just that wholesome state. Maybe I don't have a wholesome state right now, but I can be unperplexed about what a wholesome state is, what a wholesome state that I've had in the past was, what a wholesome state feels like. And these are things that we can do to just cut the perplexity and the convolutedness of the doubting mind. Another thing that I've seen in myself is that doubt often is sort of greed dressed up in, kind of I think of it as a white collar criminal. It like seems more sophisticated and more, more sophisticated than just plain greed. But my doubt is very has a lot of greed in it. I want to be farther along the path. I want to have, more stable meditation. I'm wanting. That's where my doubt is. And this is something, I guess, where investigation can be useful to unpack doubt. But I really didn't want to be talking a lot about doubt. I wanted to talk more about faith and just the brightness and the joy of having a lot of trust and a lot of confidence in the Buddha's enlightenment and the Buddha's instructions, and eventually the Buddha will be our very best friend. That's what the suttas are saying. That's what the Buddha is offering. And I guess the last thing I would like to share is, when we do brighten the mind with faith in the Buddha's teachings and in the Buddha's experience, we can really open our minds and open our hearts. And I just wanted to share in closing these amazing suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya, the very first book of the Samyutta, the connected discourses of the Buddha, is the first book is all verses that have been grouped together because they're verse. But there's a whole section in there's so many suttas in the Samyutta where there's a monk or a nun, a practitioner, and they're getting tangled up. They're trying to meditate and they're having difficulty, and these devas see them and come and help. I just want to end there. That I just want to throw it out there that we really start, I want to use the word pray, but if people are uncomfortable with that, you could use the word incline the mind. That's not a word, it's a phrase. You could use the phrase incline the mind, whatever you're comfortable with, or open the mind, be realizing that there are all these realms. The Buddha certainly had full awareness of them and access to be in them and to visit them and to interact with them. But there are many tree spirits and devas, and there is help available, guardian angels. So however you want to talk about it or phrase it or think of it, it's totally in the suttas. So I'm very comfortable to talk about it. I could read an entire book. But here, I'll just end. Okay, I'll read one sutta, and it's the first one in the Connected Discourses in the Woods. So this is book 1, chapter 9. And if you don't have a Samyutta, you can just go on Sutta Central. And so book 1, chapter 9. But this whole chapter, sutta after sutta after sutta, has this same pattern. So, thus have I heard, on one occasion a certain bhikkhu was dwelling among the Kosalans in a certain woodland thicket. Now on that occasion, while that bhikkhu had gone for his day's abiding, he kept on thinking evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with the household life. Then the devata that inhabited that woodland thicket, having compassion for that bhikkhu, desiring his good, desiring to stir up a sense of urgency in him, approached him and addressed him in verse. And the devata says to him, desiring seclusion, you entered the woods. yet your mind gushes outwardly. Remove, man, the desire for people. Then you'll be happy, devoid of lust. You must abandon discontent. Be mindful. Let us remind you that the way of the good, hard to cross indeed, is the dusty abyss. Don't let sensual dust drag you down. Just as a bird littered with soil, with a shake, flicks off the sticky dust, so a bhikkhu, strenuous and mindful, with a shake, flicks off the sticky dust. Then that bhikkhu, stirred up by that devata, acquired a sense of urgency. So may we be continuing to grow in our trust and confidence in the Buddha's awakening, and maybe we even entertain the idea of asking the devas to help us with our meditation, with our mind states, with our understanding. Maybe we consider getting the universe on our side, at our back. So I'll offer these words of encouragement from the suttas. And please, anybody that has any questions or difficulties or anything want to talk about, we have a few minutes for that.
I really relate to the woodland devata because I just went camping, and the trees are very friendly and encouraging. And there were a number of sort of struggles I was trying to make decisions about. And after coming back from camping, it was like 1, 2, 3, I know what I'm going to do. And it's partly faith, and then there was an aspect of generosity in the mind, of what's generous to do. And I was listening to a teacher, one of Gil Fronsdal's cohorts, was talking about generosity and saying it's letting go is one of the aspects of generosity. Is in this situation, what can I do to let go? So having faith, feeling the energy of life in the trees, and then what do I need to let go of? Because so many of my struggles are about what I'm clinging to and making things more complicated than they are. So thank you very much for your talk. I found it very helpful.
Yeah, Leslie, that's thank you for sharing. It's super encouraging. And there are passages in the scriptures where there's all kinds of previous Buddhas named by the Buddha, our Buddha. And often you'll learn the main male disciple, the 2 main male disciples, the 2 main female disciples. There are certain occasions where you learn what tree that Buddha gained enlightenment under. Every Buddha gained enlightenment under a different tree. So our particular Buddha was the Bodhi tree, but other Buddhas, it was a different tree. Trees are a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So you said specifically like faith in the Buddha's awakening, and so I guess like is the corollary like then also like faith in the potential for our own awakening, or is that like separate? Or
No, I think that's in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally, Jonathan. But I think yeah, when the faith is really, really, really in the Buddha's experience and the Buddha's enlightenment, then the correlate, that beautiful word that I have trouble saying, yeah, that one, is yes, that's available for every human, for every being, really, like, because there are beings that do, you know, maybe we've all spent time in all of the realms, but there are beings that actually are finishing the path in the Devata realm. It's not super common, but it exists. So I do better when I think about just the potential for all beings rather than the potential for me. Yeah, because that one, then I can start doing a lot of the me problems.
Yeah, I hear that. Thank you.
Was it at all surprising or bristling or challenging for me to talk about us like praying to devas kind of talk?
What I found is that, I mean, I totally believe that the Buddha, in the Buddha's enlightenment, but I've never questioned. I felt like I didn't have any doubt in my mind until I heard you speaking today, and now I see there's other aspects of doubt that about myself that I never considered before. So I found that helpful. Thank you, Ayya.
I'm surprised, very interested that the devas are in the actual sutras, because I have another teacher who does Qigong, Chinese traditional medicine. He's all into trees. So now I have a more of a basis for understanding that. So thank you very much.
I wanted to speak, but I see Karen, you have your hand up, so I don't know if you wanted to go.
You go ahead and I'll go after.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you for your talk. I'm curious to know, I'm really happy to hear more about the devas and those realms. And I really haven't, I haven't been learning the Dharma for very long, but I don't hear it very much. And I'm curious to know why, and why we don't talk more about it, or because the idea of prayer, you know, has this, I grew up with a certain religion of prayer. And so it's got some connotations for me, but so I'm super interested in all of that, and wondering why we don't talk about it more. But.
You know, prayer, that word definitely is not in the scriptures, you know, but I think the idea of inclining the mind, of opening the heart, of considering these concepts are in the scriptures. I think that we, you know, I don't want to give a comprehensive answer. I don't want to speak for other people. I do think that many people have had challenging sometimes unsatisfying, maybe even hurtful, damaging experiences in organized religion. And I think that one appeal of Buddhism to the Western mind is the sort of rationalness of it. So I do think that there is a tendency to downplay the mystical aspects that certainly are there. You know, I think that's part of it. But, and I think that if entertaining the mystical components and the many realms is agitating for people, then they should put that down and not. But if it's nourishing for somebody, then definitely go open that way. Yeah. There are many, you know, the Buddha describes many different kinds of paths, you know, and many different kinds of beings. And there are Dhamma followers, there are faith followers, there are, you know, different, our minds have different karmic histories and different inclinations and propensities. And we have to work with what's here. But like Leslie was sharing, like if it is nurturing, then a big green light.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please, Karen.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it funny, Ayya, that you brought up prayer, because just the other day I was saying to somebody that I was going to pray for them because they were going through a bit of stuff. And as I walked away, I was like, oh, well, Buddhists, we don't really pray, but I like the action of praying. I do get a lot out of it. And when I am praying, it's usually something that I feel is wholesome. Like I'm not praying for anything bad to happen. I'm usually wishing well for somebody is usually what it is. And yeah, I don't know who I'm praying to sometimes, but you gave me a great idea. I can pray to the divas now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I got someone I can pray to now. That's awesome. So I think it's funny how in this Dharma life that, you know, these teachings come along just at the right time. And I did have a teacher that once said, you know, when we do our practice, we're putting wholesome energy out there, and there's so much unwholesome out there. We're helping to balance things out in the world. So yeah, thanks for bringing up prayer. Actually, that really was very insightful for me. Thank you.
And just a caveat, I you know, if the idea of prayer is like agitating, please just delete the file, you know. But if it's helpful, because it's just a word, you know. But I think this idea of energy is very Buddhist, very, and that's what we're doing. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, on the topic of faith, I really enjoyed this talk and faith in the Buddha's enlightenment. One of the things that opened up for me was just in this, you know, faith to keep my heart open and let go just in this moment, and in this moment, and in this moment, and now in this moment, you know, right there where there's nothing being held. And boy, that could be a workout. But I really appreciate you bringing it up, Ayya. So thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Letting go, beautiful. And thank you, Leslie, for sharing. Letting go is an aspect of generosity. I'm going to take that one away and think about it. It's beautiful. Generous to ourselves too. Yeah. Thank you so very much, all of you, for your earnest practice, and may you be well. Yes. May we all continue continue to make progress. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.